So I mentioned just before we went to break, we discussed at the time the city deciding to finally do something about safety in the metro stations. A lot of Montrealers saying, you know what, I don't feel safe. People who either, for whatever situation they find themselves in, are either there, sleeping, either loitering, injecting drugs. So the city went out and decided that, we're going to make this a priority. But Jason Magder of the Montreal Gazette took a bit of a deeper dive into this story and talked to not just people, who are still in those metro stations, but to security people anonymously who are dealing with this. And he's on the line. Jason, thanks for taking the time.
Good afternoon, Ryan.
Let me begin by asking, so when I say took a deeper dive, it's one thing to suggest, as the city did, that this will help. It's another when you go into the stations and find out if it's fair to say, has anything changed?
Yeah, very much so. I planned to just go to the station to talk to a few commuters and see what was going on. And I ended up spending an hour in this metro station. And what was most striking was the fact that there were two security guards. Usually you see them walking around, talking to a customer here and there. They were almost in mid-jog, going from crisis to crisis. There was one person who was screaming, surrounded by in a place where people were gathering, where they were eating actually. So they ran over to that person and escorted her out. They found another person who was about to inject herself and asked her to leave. And then there was another altercation between a commuter and someone who was just hanging out in the station. And so they ran over to deal with that. And in between all of that, they got him in to talk to me, and they said, we don't have more staff. The police aren't here more often, and we have to carry out these orders, and it's a lot of work, and we're not managing. It's not working very well.
So you're describing a situation, when I said anything, but you're describing a situation where things have actually gotten worse, if I can say.
I don't think they've gotten worse, because if you've gone to, I was at the Bonaventure Metro Station today, and there were almost nobody hanging around at the benches where they usually are. I think that there has been a message that's been sent out that people are no longer welcome in the metro stations, and we're seeing definitely fewer people hanging out, fewer people loitering, fewer people sleeping on the benches and asking for money. But I guess the brunt of that is falling on the employees, and I don't know how long they can keep this up.
So the failure here, as I'm hearing you describe this and reading the piece, is the city, while in theory suggesting, we're going to take this more seriously, in practice it's not, because there are no more people to deal with this situation than there were to start with.
Well, that's correct. There's no more. First of all, most importantly, is there are no more places for them. The shelters are already full. And the city, Madame Plante was asked about that. The shelters are full. Where are they going to go? There's no answer. They don't know. So that's the first problem. They're basically, people are using this as a place to stay warm. And this morning it was still quite cold. It's been cold the last few days. So where are these people going? The city doesn't have an answer. And so they do end up in the stations. But now the fear is if there's a message that they're not allowed there anymore, and there's no place for them to go, then they're just essentially, people are saying that they're going to be doing dangerous things and going to dangerous places and in places where we can't find them.
As I said, we're kind of back to square one. This was a problem before. There weren't places for these people if we wanted to offer them a place to go. So really, what's changed here?
What's changed is the message. The message is out that they are not allowed to be there anymore, and the security guards are the ones that have to enforce that message, and they're doing it as best as they can.
Now, beyond talking to security guards, which I said you did anonymously, you talked to some of the people who might frequent the stations. What did they say?
They said they definitely noticed there are fewer people hanging around. I've noticed that I've been taking the metro quite regularly too since the order came through. So there's definitely fewer people. People are concerned though that if they're just sending them out onto the street, where are they going to go? What's going to happen to them? I also spoke with a few, a few of the, we'll call them loiterers, because we don't necessarily know they're homeless or not, but people who tend to hang out in the station. And they've told me that they've noticed, at least one of them told me he knows that the STM officers are a little more aggressive than they used to be or much less tolerant, a little more, forcing them out much more often than they used to, and being violent sometimes about it as well.
So all in all, what's your take after having done this and spent the time and, sort of talked to both sides in here? What do you think?
I think it's definitely a question of resources. There's not more resources to deal with the problem. There's not more resources to house these people, and there are not more resources to help them get the help they need. And as for the people who have to deal with the order that's been sent from on high, they're the ones really left with the biggest burden of all, I think.
I know when the budget came out and different people in different, sort of organizations looked and said, we've been left out. And of course, public transit in Montreal was one of them. I'm just wondering if any of that might have made a difference had there been money allotted to public transit here. Not in terms of obviously, building a tramway or building the Pink Line, but in terms of dealing with this problem.
Well, what do they say? They say the biggest problem is not the officers and the shelters necessarily. The biggest problem is the housing crisis, and that hangs over everything, right? So there are no places for people to go. People can't afford homes, so more and more people are ending up on the street. So that's the core of it, and the historic underfunding of the housing crisis at the federal and provincial level is where the problem starts, and you can see it on the streets and in the metro station.
Yeah, which brings me back to the budget. You'd think if that's the case, and we know this to be the problem, there might have been some more money allotted for housing to be built, social housing to be built to afford for the issue, for the problem, and I don't believe that was anywhere in the budget either, but that's a separate discussion. Okay. Jason, I thank you. I appreciate the time.
Thanks.
You bet. Jason Magder over at the Montreal Gazette. That's it, isn't it? I mean, we go back to the budget. You're going to hear an interview coming up. I did this a little earlier today with Marina Boulos-Winton from an organization called YES, which helps Anglos find employment, entrepreneurship issues as well that they can deal with. And it's the same kind of thing, funding cut there. And funding here for something is, I was going to say is simple, for something is recognizable as social housing and the need for it. And you hear stories like this about people who, even if we're, getting them out of the metro, they have nowhere to go. So the government realizes this is a problem, yet doesn't afford the resources, at least financially, to simply say, okay, we know it's a problem. Here's money. Let's build these homes. That doesn't seem to be top of mind for them. It's hard to understand.